Today we open the gate to the past. In addition, we look at some overwhelming discoveries that allow us to delve deeper than ever into the reality of our ancestors. Do you have any idea why the trade in dead people was booming in the Baroque period? Or what the discovery of a treasure tells us about the career of a criminal? Let us know what you think in the comments below and see if you got it right by the end of this video. Before we get started, be sure to hit the like button and ring the notification bell for more videos. Also, stick around until the end to learn about one of the most fantastic discoveries in years. The holy bodies. They are adorned with magnificent precious stones and clothed in the finest fabrics. The sacred bodies have been on display in the Valsassen Abbey Basilica for centuries. In detail, the extravagantly decorated skeletons go back to a fundamental decision from the 16th century. The Council of Trent decided that the holy bodies of the martyrs should be worshipped by Christians. So what strikes us as both strange and uncanny was, at the time, a legitimate depiction of divine glory. In fact, a real competition soon broke out between the churches in southern Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. Everyone wanted to secure one of the morbid Roman relics, at best to rise to the prestigious place of pilgrimage. Accordingly, it was not uncommon at the time for the sacred bones to be brought across the Alps in masses. Then, it was a matter of assembling the bones correctly and staging them with the finest embroidery and glittering gold decorations. In the end, the supposed martyrs, of whom we don't know at all whether they really died a martyr's death, were presented in glass shrines. A bowl of dried blood testified to the torments the deceased had endured for his Christian faith. In Valsassen, in Upper Palatinate, we can still marvel at the incredible blossoms that Baroque church cult threw up. In the course of the Enlightenment, however, the veneration of the dead came under increasing criticism, so that from the 19th century, fewer and fewer catacomb saints were imported from Rome. Gigante von Monte PRAMA. In the 1970s, near Monte PRAMA on the Sinise Peninsula, researchers came to a groundbreaking conclusion. The area was once guarded by full-grown giants. Okay, admittedly, the guards, who were up to 2.5 meters tall, were not made of flesh and blood, but of sandstone. The giants of Monte PRAMA were given the task of protecting the 30 neuragic squat tombs that were discovered at the same time. With success, the ancient tombs were still in an intact condition after all this time. Analysis of the approximately 5,000 fragments indicates that over 40 of these stone colossuses once existed. However, it is unclear when exactly the imposing artifacts were created. The not uncontroversial estimates date the period of origin to the years 1100 to 900 BC. Vinland map. The Vinland map embodied the oldest known map showing a stretch of coastline in North America. As the document shows, the discovery of the so-called Vinland was credited to a certain Bjarni and his colleague Leif. However, the history of the Icelandic explorers who advanced to America in the late Middle Ages is overshadowed by a major downer. A few months ago, the Vinland map turned out to be a brazen forgery. This is a conclusion reached by some specialists from Yale University. Although the parchment actually dates from the Middle Ages, the ink lacks certain elements that were typical of that time. As a result, the map was probably made in the 20th century. The altar of the Serpent King. It's the year 2018 when archaeologists made an absolutely sensational find deep in the jungle of Guatemala, a stone Mayan altar that had slumbered in secret for almost 1,500 years. This embodies quite a few of the oldest known artifacts from the classic Maya period, which is dated to the period from 250 to 900 AD. The illustrations on the object give us a lively insight into a forgotten part of history, as they tell of the hitherto unknown ruler, Choctaw Ikak. Depicted with a two-headed serpent, the king of La Corona may have had close political ties to the capital of the Kanul kingdom. The fact that a snake was immortalized on a large limestone slab is no coincidence. The rulers of the Kanal dynasty were also known as the Snake Kings, in reference to the tutelary gods. In addition, the altar contains information about the early expansion strategies of the Kanal kings, who ruled much of the Maya lowlands for centuries during the classical period. Hidden coin treasure. Founded in Tasmania in 1830, Port Arthur has long served as a convict colony. The criminals who were sent there then had to build ships, make shoes, work as blacksmiths, and make wood or bricks. By the early 1840s, over 1,200 men were serving punishment here, and a recent find suggests that not every prisoner reformed during the Port Arthur period. At least that is what the buried hoard of coins found near the former foundry bears witness to. Since the convicts themselves were not allowed to own any money, it seems reasonable to conclude that the silver shillings were stolen from a warden and then hidden. It is unclear why the loot was ultimately never taken away. Perhaps the thief was suspected and was no longer allowed to enter the workshop. It is possible that the culprit was released from his penal service before he could collect the stolen coins. Antique bathroom. Located near what is now the city of Izmir in Turkey, the inhabitants of ancient Smyrna enjoyed regular theatrical performances between the years 1000 and 300 BC. The 2,200-year-old latrine, which was brought back to light a few months ago, shows where the actors disappeared to when they had to go to the toilet. Up to 13 people could relieve themselves here at the same time. What we lacked in terms of privacy back then was a place that also served to maintain social contacts. However, the latrine, which was cleaned with running water, could only be used by the artists. The approximately 20,000 spectators who found space in the theater could use the visitor toilets. Medieval propaganda. Edward of Woodstock, better known as the Black Prince, was born on June 15, 1330. As the eldest son and heir to the throne of King Edward III, Edward was popular among his people for his bravery, while he was feared among his enemies as a cunning general. There is still speculation about the background of his nickname. Written sources do not mention the name the Black Prince until 160 years after Edward's death. Some experts speculate that the English nobleman wore black armor during the battles of the 100 Years' War. Other scholars consider it more likely that the nickname derived from the king's son's brutal warfare. A new theory now suggests that the sonorous name was deliberately circulated to cement the disputed succession to the throne of Edward's son Richard. However, this medieval propaganda probably did not help to clear the family name of the merciless king after what is retrospectively referred to as the tyranny of Richard II. The majority of the army turned its back on its ruler and went over to his uncle Henry Bolingbroke. Slave housing in Pompeii. Buried after a massive eruption of Mount Vesuvius, Pompeii is considered the prime example of an ancient city perfectly preserved for posterity. The completely intact slave room, which was recently rediscovered outside the city walls of Pompeii, presents itself in the form of an overwhelming time capsule. Both the 3 wooden beds and the vessels with the metal and fabric objects they contain have managed to survive all the centuries. A year earlier, the remains of 2 victims of the volcanic eruption had been found in the villa in question, presumably a housekeeper and his slaves. The 16-meter square slave room was again very Spartan. There was no trace of wall decorations, and the only light source was a small window. Oldest footprints in America. If you want to know the routes taken by America's earliest known settlers, you've come to the right place if you've reached the White Sands region in the U.S. state of New Mexico. The footprints, which were pressed into the then still soft plaster, are estimated to be 21 to 23,000 years old. The imprints were thus created during the coldest phase of the last ice age and prove that humans settled on the American continent before the glaciers melted. The 61 human footprints once again cast doubt on the famous Bering Strait theory. According to this theory, our ancestors only reached America 13,000 years ago, after the icy passage had been uncovered. Particularly interesting, most of the footprints discovered were from young people and children, a circumstance that perhaps gives a deep insight into the way of life at that time. While the adults went hunting, the younger ones gathered food or just played on the lakeshore. Roman battlefield. In the 1st century BC, a battle broke out between the Romans and a local tribe in southeastern Switzerland. Until recently, experts thought they had recovered all the artifacts from this ancient battlefield, but they were wrong. This is how a detectionist managed to track down a 2,000-year-old Roman dagger there. Having become aware of the discovery, the site should be subjected to a professional excavation again. And indeed, the researchers had to admit that they had not worked quite as thoroughly in the past. Accordingly, the archaeologists came across hundreds of new artifacts, including slingshots, coins, nails, and a fragment of a shield. Historians estimate that 1,500 men took part in the battle at that time. Compared to the massive battles fought by the Romans elsewhere in Europe, however, the incident in Switzerland was a minor skirmish. Further investigations should help narrow the timeline of the battle and gain information about the casualties on both sides. SANXINGDUI. The fact that the SANXINGDUI people were among the most prosperous cultures of Bronze Age China is evident from a quick glance at all the remarkable artifacts that this group produced during their existence. According to this, the SANXINGDUI created between the 12th and 11th centuries BC, among other things, colossal human figures that were 2.6 meters high and weighed 180 kilograms. The bronze tree, which is decorated with flowers, ornaments, and birds, also testifies to the extraordinary skill of this culture. Particularly famous are the mysterious bronze masks and heads, which with their grotesque shapes do not seem to come from this world. Incidentally, we have a simple farmer to thank for the fact that we know anything about the SANXINGDUI. In 1929, he accidentally came across a huge accumulation of jade artifacts. However, it would take until 1986 before the thousands of other relics of the lost people were finally found in the area. Despite all the spectacular discoveries, very little is known about the way of life and the demise of the SANXINGDUI. Khat Shabib. One would think the original purpose of an ancient wall would be elucidated fairly quickly, but in the case of Khat Shabib in Jordan, this is not the case. What is certain is that the structure with a length of 150 kilometers cuts an extremely impressive figure. What is also certain, however, is that the waist-high wall was far too small to offer effective protection against enemies. So today we still don't know what really made people build the strange construct hundreds of years ago. Rediscovered in 1948, one possible explanation is that Khat Shabib was once used to defend against opponents, although they wore no armor and swords, but fur and hooves. As a result, the small wall was built to keep hungry goats and other animals away from the residents' farmland. It is also possible that this was a fixed boundary and divided the land of the farmers and that of nomadic hunters. Williams Enigmalith. The so-called Williams Enigmalith is a prime example of an out-of-place artifact, a find that just doesn't fit into its historical context. According to his own statements, the eponymous engineer John Williams encountered the mysterious structure in 1998. However, he did not want to reveal exactly where he found the bizarre stone. However, the discoverer swears on high that the electrical plug was not subsequently worked into the rock. According to this, the plug, like the surrounding rock, would have to be at least 100,000 years old. But how is that even possible? Evidence of a highly developed civilization that once roamed our globe? A clue to the existence of time travel? Or just a brazen forgery, as most scientists suspect? What are your thoughts on the Williams Enigmalith? Feel free to let us know in the comments below. So folks, that's it again with our trip into the past. Which discovery surprised you the most? And what do you think about the bizarre martyr cult that used to be practiced in many churches? We are already looking forward to your comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a video again. And with that, thanks for watching. Have a good one and see you next time.